Hello everyone and welcome to the video, and today we're going to be going over probably the best magic build in Elden Ring. So this is going to be a build that primarily scales around intelligence, and for this build specifically I decided to not go full caster, so it is a little bit more of a melee kind of bruiser build. However, you'll see that when I go over a little bit more. But one thing I want to say before we get into the video is that if you guys like this build, make sure to drop a like on the video and a sub to the channel. It would help me out a lot and I would really appreciate it. But with that being said, the next thing I want to say is that if you guys have any trouble getting any of the items in game, you could actually go to MMOEXP.com and get any item you are unable to get for whatever reason and use code iSeraph for 5% off. I'll put the link in the description. So with that being said, the first thing we always talk about is the gear of the build. So for this build, we have the Wing of Astal +9. We have two of them, so we are dual wielding, power stancing, curved swords. It has a great moveset and it's very powerful. And then we have the Lusat's Glintstone Staff +9, gives us a lot of power. For the fashion, we have the Lusat's Glintstone Crown, Veteran's Armor, Bullgoat Gauntlets, and Bullgoat Greaves. Then for our talismans, we have the Magic Scorpion Charm, gives us extra magic damage, the Graven Mask Talisman, which boosts our sorceries, and then we have the Shard of Alexander, which greatly boosts the attack power of skills, very important for the build, and then the Great Jar's Arsenal. This could be substituted if you don't need as heavy of armor. And then for our Wondrous Physic, we have the Magic Shroud and Crack tier and the Opaline Bubble tier. This boosts our damage up a lot more as well. So now we're going to look at the stats of the build. So we are level 150, we have 45 Vigor, 32 Mind, 30 Endurance, 10 Strength, 35 Dexterity, and 60 Intelligence. So before I actually explain why I put the stats in the places that I did and talk a little bit more about the build, we could look at the spells. So the first spell we have is Terra Magica, and then we have the Stars of Ruin, and then Loretta's Great Bow, followed by Shard Spiral, and last but not least we have Glintstone Pebble. So now I want to talk a little bit about why the weapons I use, why the stats I put, and the spells, just to explain a little bit in depth why they work and why they're so good. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the weapon choice. A lot of people really love the Moonveil Katana for its incredibly easy playstyle and the fact that you can get the attack off very quickly. Paired with its really good damage, it is a solid option. However, with power stancing of the curved swords, I felt as though I could do more damage because of the weapon art of these Wing of Astals. They do this Nebula weapon art that is absolutely incredible. When boosted, I can do upwards of 3,000 damage while not standing in my Terra Magica, and I can get this ability off pretty much just as quick as Moonveil, so it's absolutely incredible. Definitely one of the most powerful things in the game, and whereas some of you might be thinking, well, this isn't the best build because there is still Comet Azure, well, that's boring. You might be able to do a little bit more damage with Comet Azure. I'm honestly not even sure. I'd have to test the numbers, but honestly, like I said, overall, that build is so boring, and I didn't want to do a full caster build because you guys have seen it before. It's old news, and no one really wants to do that. Also, it's not good for PvP at all. You're never going to hit anyone with a Comet Azure in PvP, so you just need to count that out. It's a bad build for PvP. Also, I didn't want to just be one of those guys that just spam spells because that's boring as well. And whereas that could be effective with the Stars of Ruin in PvP, it's not a great playstyle to run. And you could run it with this build, however, I don't. So the next thing I want to talk about is the stats allocated. A lot of people know that the soft cap ends at 80, and my intelligence only goes up to 60. This is because I was actually able to get more damage scaling for my weapons by putting a little bit more points into dex, because the diminishing returns on the intelligence, I was actually able to get more scaling on the weapon with the lower points of dexterity, so I got that up to 35 and 60 intelligence, and this gave me a nice little boost of damage where I was able to do a lot more with the swords. So now I want to talk about exactly how the build works and what makes it so good. Basically, the first thing you're always going to want to do is pop your Wondrous Physic, and whenever you get within range of the boss, you can throw down one of your Terra Magicas and just spam your weapon art for your L2. It does incredible damage. You're able to do so much. It does over 3,000, and like I said, it's just as fast as a Moonveil Katana, all things included when you take into time from when you start to finish the animation and when you can cast your next ability. It's probably around the same time. It's incredibly quick, and it does tons of damage, and you could spam them one after another very quickly. And then for the spells, we have some ranged options. We have the Spiral Shard that does a lot of damage to bosses since it goes through them. We also have the Glintstone Pebble. This is just for poke damage for PvP. It's just nice to have a little bit extra damage coming in. And it also gives us that range factor and something that could be thrown out and hard to dodge usually. And then of course we have the Stars of Ruin. This is something you guys are very familiar with. It's spammed all the time in PvP. I did put it in the build because it's incredible for PvP, like I said, and it does a decent amount of damage. However, it's not the main point of the build, as you're going to see in some of these videos. I absolutely destroyed a 3-stack right in the beginning of the video with the Wing of Asta weapon art. It killed all 3 of them in one hit, so it does incredible damage. So one thing you do want to make sure that you're doing, this does work in PvP, but mostly this is a PvE thing. You just want to make sure you're standing in your Terra Magica buff, because this does insane damage. I think it's about 35% more, so you want to make sure that you are in that at all times whenever you're casting your Nebula ability. You could also do it in PvP if you're being pushed. A lot of times you'll be ganked, so you can throw down the Terra Magica and just hold your ground. If they push into you, you could do the Nebula attack, and it will literally one-shot them every single time. So it does incredible damage. Definitely one of the best builds in the entire game. The only one that competes with it and probably does better than it would be like a full-on Rivers of Blood arcane build. But this, in terms of a magic build, is probably one of the best and most well-rounded builds that you could have in Elden Ring right now for an intelligence build. So we usually talk about the downsides of the builds, but for this one specifically, there really isn't one. I can't think of a single downside of the build, with the fast cast time, the moveset of the 2 curved swords, and the fact that you have tons of mobility, as well as something that can track down enemies with the Stars of Ruin, and heavy hitters like the Nebula weapon art. It's just overall one of the best builds in the game, and if you guys like it, like I said, make sure to drop a like on the video. But that's pretty much it for today. So one thing I actually didn't mention was the fact that if you guys have a specific build you want to see, make sure to comment it below, and I will be taking the one with the most likes and making a build out of it. But that's pretty much it for today's video, so thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you next time.